The TSA officer looked at the clear plastic bag of pills in your hand, then back at your face, and asked the one question you weren't ready for. "Ma'am, can you tell me what each of these is?" You freeze. Half the pills are round, half are oval, 2 are split in a pill cutter, and the names on the bottles are sitting in a drawer 800 miles away. This exact scene plays out at security checkpoints across the country every single day. And starting in 2026, with new scanner technology rolling into more airports each month, the stakes of how you pack your medications and your mobility equipment just went up. Here is the honest truth. Travelers with medical needs are not the problem at security. The problem is that nobody ever sits them down and walks them through what the rules actually say. So that is exactly what we are going to do right now. Keep your meds. Keep your dignity. Keep your flight time. No nightmare required. Airports across the country have been quietly swapping out their old X-ray belts for something called a CT scanner. And that single change rewrites the rules for how you present your medications. These machines do not take flat pictures anymore. They build a full 3-dimensional image of every item in your bag. That sounds like a small detail, but it matters for anyone traveling with pills, liquids, or medical devices. At airports equipped with these newer scanners, officers can often tell exactly what is in a container without opening it. In some lanes, travelers no longer have to pull out their small liquids bag at all. That convenience comes with a catch. The 3-ounce liquid limit itself has not gone away. TSA has been clear on that point throughout 2026. What changed is how the machines read your bag, not what you are allowed to carry inside it. So the advice you might have heard from a friend who flew last month may or may not apply to your airport this week. The safest approach, and the one we are going to use throughout this whole guide, is to pack like you are flying through a traditional checkpoint. If you get a lane with faster technology, great. If not, you are already prepared, and you walk right through while other passengers are unpacking their bags on the floor. Ask 10 travelers about the 3-ounce liquid rule, and 9 of them will swear it applies to prescription medicine. It does not. The TSA has kept the same policy in place for years, and it is still active in 2026. Medically necessary liquids, gels, and aerosols are exempt from the standard 3.4-ounce limit. You can bring as much as you reasonably need for your trip. That covers liquid antibiotics, cough syrups prescribed by a doctor, saline solution for contact lenses, liquid nutrition supplements, eye drops, and injectable medications. It also covers over-the-counter items when they are used for a genuine medical reason. Here is the part that trips people up. The exemption is not automatic. You have to declare these items to the officer at the beginning of the screening process. That single step is what unlocks the exception. If you walk a 12-ounce bottle of liquid medication through the checkpoint without saying a word and hope the scanner misses it, you are going to have a very different day than the traveler next to you, who calmly sets it in a bin and tells the officer what it is. The declaration takes about 4 seconds. Just say, "I have medically necessary liquids in my bag." That is it. The officer may ask to screen them separately. They may run a trace test on the outside of the container. What they will not do, in the vast majority of cases, is take them from you. Now, one more thing to remember here. Keep these items easy to reach, not buried under 3 sweaters and a charger cord. Right on top, or in a side pocket, you can open one-handed. That weekly pill organizer sitting on your kitchen counter is one of the most convenient inventions in modern medicine, and one of the most commonly flagged items at airport security. The TSA itself does not require medications to be in their original prescription bottles. That is worth repeating, because a lot of travelers have been told the opposite. Federally, you can fly domestically with pills in any container you want. However, and this is a big however, there is a gap between what the federal rule says and what actually happens at the checkpoint. Officers are trained to identify items quickly. A labeled pharmacy bottle takes 2 seconds to recognize. A 7-day organizer with 14 different pills inside takes longer. If an officer cannot tell what something is, they may ask to screen it separately or send it for further inspection. That is where your smooth 5-minute stop becomes a 20-minute one. The fix is simple. If you use a pill organizer, bring a printed copy of your prescriptions or a note from your doctor listing what you take. Keep it folded in the same pocket as the organizer. Even better, bring one original bottle of each important medication and fill the organizer from those bottles as you travel. For international flights, this matters even more. Many countries require original packaging at customs, and what TSA accepts on the way out may not be what customs accepts on the way back. Insulin, certain injectable arthritis medications, and GLP-1 pens like Ozempic all share one inconvenient truth. They have to stay cold. That means ice packs, gel packs, or a small medical cooler. TSA allows all of these through security. What matters is their state when they hit the scanner belt. The rule is simple, and it catches thousands of travelers off guard every year. Ice packs must be completely frozen solid at the moment they go through screening. If there is any slush, any melting, any liquid pooling at the bottom of the pack, the officer may classify it as a standard liquid. And if that pack is over 3.4 ounces, which almost all medical cooling packs are, it can be confiscated. Here is the workaround frequent flyers use. Freeze your ice packs overnight before travel. Pack them in an insulated cooler bag with the medication in the middle. Arrive at the airport early enough that they have not started to thaw. If you have a long connection ahead, ask the officer politely if a supervisor can check the pack and let you refreeze it later at a gate lounge or a restaurant. Most airports have freezers available if you ask nicely. One more thing. Never, under any circumstances, put temperature-sensitive medication in checked baggage. The cargo hold can swing from freezing to overheated in a single flight, and a $20,000 prescription can turn into a useless bottle by the time you land. Carrying a loose syringe through airport security sounds like a recipe for a long conversation in a small room, but it does not have to be. TSA permits unused syringes in carry-on bags. The one condition is that they must be accompanied by the injectable medication they are meant for. An empty syringe by itself without any matching prescription is going to raise questions. A syringe in the same pouch as your insulin pen, or your GLP-1 pen, or your prescribed injectable is exactly what the officer expects to see. The same logic applies to insulin pumps, continuous glucose monitors, and EpiPens. These are recognized medical devices. You can wear them through the metal detector, through the body scanner, or even keep them on during a pat-down. You do not have to disconnect a pump. You do not have to remove a sensor from your arm. You do, however, need to tell the officer you are wearing one before screening begins. That 30-second heads-up prevents almost every problem people worry about. For used sharps, bring a small, sealed travel sharps container. Never toss a used needle into a trash can or a seat back pocket. That is both a health hazard and a potential legal issue, depending on the state. If you are traveling with a significant number of injectables, a doctor's note that describes the condition and lists the equipment is your best friend. You are not required to show it. But if a question comes up, that one sheet of paper makes the entire conversation shorter. Walking aids are allowed through every single TSA checkpoint in the country, but almost every one of them has to leave your hand at some point. Canes, walkers, and crutches go through the X-ray machine just like a backpack. If the item is too long or too awkward to fit on the belt, an officer will inspect it physically, usually swabbing it for trace residue and giving it a visual once over. The moment you probably worry about the most is the moment between handing over your cane and getting it back. You can ask the officer to be reunited with it immediately after screening. You have that right. Just say so before you place the item on the belt. For travelers using a walker, a similar option is available. Tell the officer you need the walker back as soon, as it clears the scanner so you can continue through screening. Most airports have an alternate path that keeps you near the device the entire time. White canes for travelers with low vision are also screened through the X-ray. Again, you can request immediate reunification. Hearing aids and cochlear implants are a different category entirely. You do not need to take them out for screening. They stay in. The scanner accepts them, and only additional screening is possible if the machine itself alarms. The biggest mistake travelers with walking aids make is not speaking up at the start. Officers cannot read minds. A simple, "I need this walker back as soon as it clears," changes your entire experience at the checkpoint. If you use a wheelchair or a scooter, the most important thing, To know is that you do not have to stand up, step out, or transfer to anything else just to get through screening. You can remain seated. The TSA officer will come to you. That is the standard procedure, and it has been for years. Here is what actually happens. An officer will inspect your chair or scooter, including the seat cushion, any non-removable pouches, and any fanny pack attached to the frame. Removable items, like a detachable bag on the back of the chair, will go through the X-ray separately. The chair itself will be swabbed for traces of explosive material. That swab goes into a machine, the machine reads it in about 15 seconds, and if it comes back clean, you are done. If you can stand and walk briefly, you may be asked to step through a metal detector or a body scanner while your chair is inspected. If you cannot, a pat-down will be conducted while you remain seated. By federal rule, that pat-down will be performed by an officer of the same gender, and you can request a private screening at any time. There is one special rule worth knowing. Travelers, 75 years of age or older, using a wheelchair or scooter, are offered an additional option. They may remain seated while the officer performs a trace test on their hands, with no pat-down and no separation from the device in most cases. If that applies to you or someone you travel with, mention it at the start of screening. There is a phone number most travelers with medical needs have never heard of, and it is run by TSA itself. It is called TSA Cares. The number is 855-787-2227. You can call at least 72 hours before your flight, and here is what happens. A representative will listen to your specific situation. Maybe you have a mobility aid. Maybe you are traveling with a family member who has dementia. Maybe you have an internal medical device that tends to set off scanners. The representative will coordinate with the airport you are flying out of, and if needed, arrange for a passenger support specialist to meet you at the checkpoint. A passenger support specialist is a TSA officer who has received specialized training in assisting travelers with disabilities and medical conditions. They walk you through the process, they explain each step before it happens, and they help you request any modifications you need. This service is completely free. It does not get you through the line faster. What it does is make the screening itself far smoother and much less stressful. If you are a caregiver flying with an aging parent, call this number. If you are a first-time flyer with a mobility device, call this number. 3 days of notice is all it takes, and it genuinely changes the entire experience at the airport. Sleep apnea devices, portable oxygen concentrators, and nebulizers all fall into a category the TSA calls assistive medical equipment, and they travel differently than a normal carry-on. Your CPAP machine does not count against your carry-on limit. Neither does a nebulizer. Neither does a portable oxygen concentrator. As long as it is on the FAA approved list and you have notified the airline in advance. These items can stay with you in the cabin, and they can be used on the plane if medically necessary. At the checkpoint, most machines of this type have to come out of the bag and go through the X-ray separately. An officer may ask to run a trace test on the outside of the device. The fabric bag many CPAPs come in is usually left on, but the machine itself needs a clear scan. For oxygen concentrators, bring the FAA medical clearance form your airline requires, plus enough battery life for the entire flight, plus a reasonable buffer. Most carriers want at least 1.5 times the total flight time in battery capacity. A 10-hour flight means about 15 hours of battery. Label your devices. A piece of tape with your name, phone number, and address on the bottom of your CPAP case has saved more travelers than any gadget you can buy. Equipment gets mixed up. Bags get pulled aside. A label brings it home. Most medication and mobility aid delays do not come from dramatic rule violations. They come from 5 small things, and avoiding them is easier than you think. First, burying your medications at the bottom of a stuffed carry-on. You cannot declare what you cannot reach. Keep prescriptions in a top compartment or a front pocket. Second, letting ice packs start to thaw before you reach the checkpoint. If they are slushy, the rule changes. Third, removing pills from their original bottles without keeping any kind of record. A prescription list or a photo of the bottle on your phone is enough. Fourth, forgetting to mention a medical device before walking through the scanner. That 2-second heads up prevents almost every alarm. Fifth, traveling too close to departure time. Travelers with medical needs should plan to arrive at the airport at least 90 minutes before a domestic flight and 2 hours before an international one. Everything we just covered goes smoother with buffer time. Rush through the checkpoint and small issues become big ones. Walk through it calmly with time to spare, and even a pulled-aside bag is just a 10-minute detour, not a missed flight. Even with perfect preparation, a scanner can still alarm, an officer can still ask for a closer look, or a bag can still get pulled aside for a second pass. When that happens, your rights do not disappear. You can request a private screening at any point. You can request an officer of the same gender for any pat-down. You can ask for a supervisor if you feel the process is going in a direction you are not comfortable with. You can have a companion present during a private screening, as long as they are willing to be screened as well. If your mobility device is separated from you during the process, you can tell the officer you need it back immediately before continuing. If something does go wrong, and sometimes things do, document it. Get the names of the officers involved. Note the time, the terminal, and the checkpoint lane. You can file a complaint through the TSA contact center after your flight, or you can speak with a supervisor on the spot. You are not being difficult by asking for accommodations. You are using a system that exists specifically for situations like yours. If you remember only a handful of things from everything we just covered, let it be these. Medications always travel in your carry-on, never in checked baggage, regardless of temperature or type. Liquid medications over 3.4 ounces are allowed, but you must declare them at the start of screening. Mobility aids go through screening with you, and you have the right to be reunited with them right away. The 72-hour call to TSA Cares is free, and it can transform the entire airport experience. And when something feels off at the checkpoint, you can always ask for a supervisor or a private screening. You do not have to navigate any of this alone, and you do not have to accept a stressful experience as the price of getting on a plane. Air travel with medications and mobility equipment in 2026 is absolutely manageable when you know what to expect. If this guide helped take some of the mystery out of the checkpoint for you, consider subscribing for more travel preparation walkthroughs aimed at real people with real medical needs. And if you know someone who is flying soon with a CPAP, a wheelchair, or a bag full of prescriptions, pass this along. One conversation could be the difference between their smoothest flight and their most stressful one. Safe travels, and we will see you at the gate.